Hello guys and welcome back. I'm really glad to have you here again, because in this video we are diving into the incredible journey of Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, cleverest of the Greeks, and the hero who faced monsters, gods and the fury of the sea on his way home from the Trojan War. So please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our mythological adventures. Thank you very much, and now sit back, enjoy, and have fun watching.
Introduction of Odysseus. Before the shores of Ithaca came into view, before the familiar hills and olive groves greeted his eyes, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, found himself adrift in a world shaped by gods and monsters, fate and fortune. 10 long years had passed since the fall of Troy, a decade of battles fought not only with sword and spear, but with wits, courage, and the indomitable will to survive. From the moment the Greek fleet set sail home, the sea became both adversary and test, a realm where storms rose at the command of Poseidon, the earth-shaker, who held a bitter grudge against the clever king. Odysseus was not merely a warrior. He was a master of cunning, a man whose mind often outshone even the strength of the mightiest heroes. Yet cleverness alone could not protect him from the whims of the divine. Across the wide and uncharted waters, the gods themselves watched and intervened. Athena, ever his guide, offered wisdom and subtle aid. Poseidon, relentless in his vengeance, stirred tempests and sent monstrous challenges to test his resolve. Each wave threatened to drown not only his body, but the hopes of those who waited for him in Ithaca. Each island held trials both strange and terrifying, from creatures born of nightmare to enchantresses who sought to trap him forever in comfort or oblivion. Through cunning, courage, and relentless perseverance, Odysseus pressed onward, driven by the desire to return to his home, his wife Penelope, and his son Telemachus, the life he had left behind before the war. This is a story not only of survival, but of intellect tested against chaos, of a hero navigating the fine line between mortality and legend. It is a tale of the sea's vast, untamed power, of the gods' capricious influence, and of a man's unyielding determination to reclaim what is his. Prepare to embark on a journey of peril, ingenuity, and heroism, the epic Odyssey of Odysseus, a voyage that would become immortal in song, story, and memory. Part 1. The Island of the Lotus-Eaters. After leaving the war-torn plains of Troy, Odysseus and his weary fleet sailed into the unknown, their hearts still heavy from the loss and bloodshed of the decade-long conflict. The sea stretched endlessly before them, a restless expanse that seemed to mock their efforts to return home. It was on this vast and uncertain voyage that they came upon a strange and tranquil island shrouded in mist and mystery, known to the few as the land of the Lotus-Eaters. The inhabitants of this island were a peaceful, enigmatic people, living in harmony with the land and the strange, sweet plants that grew abundantly in its lush valleys. These were no ordinary plants, for the lotus possessed a power both subtle and dangerous. Those who partook of its petals found themselves overcome with forgetfulness, a blissful amnesia that erased all cares, all memories of home, and even the pressing duty of return. Time lost meaning. The longing for Ithaca faded as the intoxicating sweetness of the lotus wrapped around mind and heart, softening the resolve of men and dulling the sharp edge of memory. Some of Odysseus' men, curious and hungry, ate of the lotus and were immediately enchanted. They wandered the island as if in a dream, forgetting their families, their homeland, and the perilous journey that still awaited them. They sat among the blooms, content to linger in a suspended reality, untroubled by hunger, danger, or the passing of days. Odysseus, ever vigilant and steadfast, quickly recognized the peril. He saw that the very essence of their mission, the disciplined march home to Ithaca, was at stake. Leadership demanded action. and he did not hesitate. With stern words, firm hands, and an unyielding sense of duty, he gathered his men, dragging those enchanted by the lotus back to the ships. He reminded them of their oath, their purpose, and the loved ones who awaited their return, rekindling in them the memory of home and the resolve to continue the journey. This encounter, brief though it seemed, was a test not of strength, but of character. It revealed the fragility of human will when faced with temptation, the necessity of discipline to resist the allure of ease and forgetfulness, and the burden of leadership upon those who must guide others through both danger and desire. For Odysseus, the island of the Lotus-Eaters was a lesson in vigilance, a reminder that even the sweetest distractions could threaten to derail the course of destiny itself. Part 2. The Cyclops Polyphemus. Odysseus and his men, after escaping the haunting bliss of the Lotus-Eaters, continued their voyage across the unpredictable sea, hearts wary and spirits tense. It was then that they came upon a rugged and desolate land, a place where jagged cliffs met the foaming waves, and in the shadows of this wild terrain lurked a terror unlike any they had faced. The Cyclops, monstrous sons of the earth, creatures of immense size and fearsome strength, with a single glaring eye that burned like a living sun in the center of their foreheads. Drawn by curiosity, Odysseus and a small party of men ventured into a cavern, seeking shelter and sustenance. There they found the dwelling of Polyphemus, a Cyclops of staggering size, whose presence radiated raw, untamed power. The cave was filled with the smell of sheep and the echoes of monstrous breathing. Initially, the men hoped for hospitality, for even in these strange lands, the customs of man might offer a glimmer of mercy. But Polyphemus, lawless and brutal, revealed the terrifying reality. He would eat them, body and bone, as casually as one might consume a meal. Trapped within the Cyclops' cavern, Odysseus' mind raced. Strength alone would not save them. Brute force was no match for such a being. It was cunning that would ensure survival. He devised a plan, one as audacious as it was dangerous. Using his wits, he introduced himself as nobody to the monster, a subtle trick that would later confound Polyphemus' cries for help. As the Cyclops slept, intoxicated on wine gifted by the clever king, Odysseus and his men drove a sharpened stake into the single eye, blinding the creature and ensuring their escape. Yet triumph came not without consequence. In their pride and urgency, Odysseus revealed his true name as they sailed away, taunting the wounded monster. Polyphemus, furious and in pain, called upon his father, Poseidon, god of the sea, to curse Odysseus' journey. Thus, a new peril was born. The wrath of a god who would pursue him across every wave, who would stir storms, summon monsters, and prolong the hero's voyage home. This encounter tested the limits of courage, ingenuity, and the deadly balance between hubris and prudence. It showed that intelligence could triumph where strength alone could not, but also that pride carries its own price, and that even clever heroes must reckon with forces greater than themselves. Forces that shape destiny across the boundless, unforgiving seas. Part 3. Aeolus and the Bag of Winds. After surviving the peril of the Cyclops, Odysseus and his weary crew sailed onward, their hearts still racing from the narrow escape. The sea, though relentless, now seemed to offer a momentary respite, a chance for hope. It was during this fragile calm that they arrived at the floating island of Aeolus, the divine keeper of the winds. Here, atop a rocky fortress that kissed the clouds, Odysseus met the god, whose power shaped the very breath of the world. Aeolus, impressed by Odysseus' cunning and resolve, offered him a gift that could determine the fate of his voyage, a bag containing all the winds of the world, bound tightly so that only the gentle west wind would remain free to guide them home. With this divine gift, Odysseus held the means to steer his fleet safely toward Ithaca, to conquer the tempests that had so far defied human mastery. It was a test, not of strength, but of responsibility, wisdom, and trust. For several days, the journey went as planned, and hope blossomed in the hearts of the men. The west wind carried them swiftly over the azure waves, and the horizon seemed to promise home. Yet human frailty, ever present, threatened this fragile triumph. Odysseus, confident in the loyalty and discipline of his crew, slept, leaving the bag within reach. Curiosity and greed whispered among the men, and in a moment of folly they opened the sacred sack, releasing the imprisoned winds in a furious tempest that instantly consumed the ship. The gales howled, the mast groaned, and waves towered like mountains, tossing the vessel across the sea as if it were a toy. Fear and despair gripped the crew as their carefully charted course dissolved into chaos. The winds scattered them far from their intended path, hurling them toward unknown shores, and the gift of Aeolus, meant to secure their return, had become a cruel reminder of human error. Odysseus, though distraught, remained steadfast, rallying his men against the fury of fate. The episode was a stark lesson in trust, obedience, and the delicate balance between human skill and divine providence. Even the cleverest of heroes, it seemed, must contend with both the whims of gods and the frailty of those who follow. For a single lapse could undo the work of 10,000 days and set destiny on a new, uncertain course. Part 4. Circe, the Enchantress. Following the trials of storm and misfortune, Odysseus and his men arrived on the mysterious island of Ogygia, home to the powerful sorceress Circe. Known in whispers and fearful tales, she possessed a magic that could bend the will of men and alter their very forms. As the crew explored the island, drawn by the scent of her sumptuous hall and the strange music that drifted through the air, some were lured into her palace, unaware of the danger that awaited them within. Circe, with her golden hair and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of the world, welcomed them with deceptive warmth. Yet the illusion of hospitality quickly shattered, for her spells transformed the men into swine, stripping them of their human shape while leaving their minds trapped within the bodies of beasts. Panic and despair threatened to overwhelm the remaining crew, and the air filled with the cries and squeals of their transformed comrades. Odysseus, guided by Athena's wisdom and aided by the god Hermes, prepared for the encounter with caution and cunning. Hermes provided him with a magical herb, moly, that would protect him from Circe's spells. Armed with this divine safeguard, Odysseus confronted the sorceress. Though her power was immense, his wit and courage allowed him to resist her enchantments. He spoke with authority, demanding the release of his men, demonstrating both respect for her abilities and the unwavering determination of a leader who would not allow his crew to perish under sorcery. Moved by his bravery and cleverness, Circe relented, restoring the men to their human forms. Yet she did not act merely as a neutral force. She offered guidance, counsel, and hospitality, revealing herself as a figure of both danger and aid, a test of restraint and judgment. During their stay, Odysseus and his men learned to temper their impulses, to resist the seductions of ease and indulgence, and to value loyalty and discipline above fleeting pleasures. This encounter with Circe became more than a tale of magic. It was a crucible in which Odysseus, leadership, and moral fortitude were forged. The hero's ability to navigate both temptation and peril, to protect his men while respecting the forces of the divine and mystical, underscored the delicate balance between human cunning and the enigmatic powers of the world, a balance that would continue to define his epic journey across the seas. Part 5. The Underworld. Guided by Circe's counsel, Odysseus prepared for a journey unlike any he had faced before, a descent into the shadowed realm of the dead, the land of shades, where the spirits of the departed lingered between worlds. The Nekuia, as the ancients called it, was a place both feared and revered, a domain where mortal life was stripped of color, warmth, and vitality, yet where wisdom and prophecy could still be sought. With solemn rites, Odysseus summoned the spirits, calling upon the dark waters and the offerings of blood to awaken those who would speak truth from beyond the grave. The air grew heavy as he crossed the boundary between life and death, and the earth itself seemed to murmur in sorrowful tones. First came the spirits of sailors and travelers, lost to sea and storm, whispering laments of lives ended too soon. Then Odysseus encountered the mighty shades of men once celebrated in Troy and across the Greek world. Among them was Agamemnon, slain by his own wife, who recounted the treacheries of life and the bitter lessons of vengeance. Nearby lingered Achilles, the peerless warrior, radiant even in death, whose words reflected the glory and futility of mortal ambition, reminding Odysseus that even the greatest heroes are bound by fate. Finally, the prophet Tiresias emerged, veiled in shadow yet speaking with unshakable authority. His prophecy was both guidance and warning. The path to Ithaca would be perilous, beset by divine wrath and mortal folly, yet perseverance, wisdom, and restraint would lead Odysseus home. He revealed the trials to come, the dangers of the Sirens, song, the deadly straits of Scylla and Charybdis, and the consequences of harming the sacred cattle of Helios. Each word was heavy with portent, a reminder that knowledge carries responsibility, and that foresight alone cannot change destiny without courage and cunning. Odysseus left the underworld with a renewed sense of purpose, his mind sharpened by encounters with the dead, his heart humbled by the fleeting nature of life and glory. The journey into shadow had granted him insight into mortality, heroism, and the weight of choice, lessons that would guide him through storms, monsters, and temptations as the hero pressed ever onward toward the distant shores of Ithaca, where home and destiny awaited. Part 6. The Sirens. Having emerged from the shadow depths of the underworld, Odysseus and his crew sailed ever closer to the fabled dangers that awaited them on the open sea. Among the most perilous were the Sirens, creatures whose voices wove enchantments of irresistible beauty and peril, drawing sailors to their doom upon jagged rocks and hidden shoals. Their song promised forbidden knowledge, the secrets of the past and the future, the deepest desires of the heart. Yet it concealed only death and despair. As the ship approached the Sirens' domain, a palpable tension gripped the crew. The sea itself seemed to pulse in anticipation, and the wind carried the faintest hint of the otherworldly melody that would soon test every man's resolve. Odysseus, forewarned by Tiresias and guided by his own cunning, devised a plan that would safeguard his men while allowing him to experience the Sirens' song firsthand. He instructed them to seal their ears with beeswax, creating a barrier against the fatal allure, and had himself bound tightly to the mast of the ship, unable to act upon the desires that the voices would awaken. As the ship drew near, the Sirens' chorus rose, weaving harmonies that shimmered like sunlight on the waves, laced with promises of glory, wisdom, and forbidden truths. Odysseus, enthralled yet powerless to move, listened with every fiber of his being, his mind stretched between fascination and discipline. He could hear the whispers of kings and heroes, the allure of worlds beyond mortal reach, yet he remained steadfast, the ropes holding him a lifeline against the pull of enchantment. The ship passed, tense and silent, through the straits of temptation, the voices fading into the distance as the danger receded. The crew, unaware of the song that had nearly claimed their leader, followed his orders without falter, their trust in Odysseus' foresight proving invaluable. The encounter with the Sirens was more than a test of cunning. It was a lesson in restraint, leadership, and the perilous seduction of desire. Odysseus emerged wiser, the experience etched into his memory, a reminder that the allure of the impossible must often be met with discipline, and that survival on the unpredictable seas of fate requires both courage and self-mastery. Part 7. Scylla and Charybdis. As Odysseus and his men continued their voyage, the horizon darkened with the looming menace of one of the most fearsome passages in all the seas, the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis. On one side, Scylla, a creature of horror with 6 writhing heads, each lined with jagged teeth, prowled the cliffs, ever ready to snatch sailors from the decks of passing ships. On the other, Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool, churned the waters into a spiraling abyss, capable of swallowing vessels whole, leaving no trace of life behind. Odysseus faced a choice that would test the very essence of leadership: sail closer to the devouring Scylla and lose a few men, or risk the entire crew being engulfed by the fury of Charybdis. The sea roared, and the cliffs echoed with the cries of both human and monster, a cacophony of fate and inevitability. With grim resolve, Odysseus guided the ship, steering closer to Scylla, accepting the tragic necessity of sacrifice. As the ship neared, the 6 heads of Scylla struck with terrifying speed, and despite all warnings and precautions, several of Odysseus' men were seized, their screams swallowed by the wind and waves. The remaining crew held fast, gripping ropes and oars, hearts pounding with terror and determination, as Odysseus' calm command kept them focused, preventing panic from claiming even more lives. Below, Charybdis churned and roared, the whirlpool threatening with every pulse of the ocean, but through skillful navigation, timing, and sheer courage, the ship skirted the edge of oblivion, escaping the full fury of the deadly vortex. This encounter was more than a trial of seamanship. It was a crucible of leadership and moral courage. Odysseus demonstrated that sometimes the path to survival demands impossible choices, where the cost of inaction could be total annihilation. In the shadow of Scylla and Charybdis, he proved that wisdom, courage, and decisiveness are the tools of a true leader, and that navigating the treacherous waters of life often requires sacrifice, strategic foresight, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Part 8. The Cattle of Helios. After surviving the perils of the Sirens and the deadly straits of Scylla and Charybdis, Odysseus and his weary crew found themselves on the sun-drenched island of Thrinacia, sacred to Helios, the sun god. Upon this island grazed herds of divine cattle, creatures of radiant beauty and power, untouchable by mortal hands. Odysseus, mindful of Tiresias, prophecy and the warnings of the gods, forbade any harm to the sacred herds, emphasizing the sanctity of obedience and the consequences that disobedience could bring. Yet hunger, fatigue, and despair gnawed at the hearts of the men. Odysseus, forced to sleep while the crew kept watch, could not restrain their growing restlessness. Against all warnings, they slaughtered some of Helios' prized cattle, their greed and impatience sealing their fate. The island seemed to tremble, the sun's brilliant light dimmed, and an ominous silence fell over the land, broken only by the distant roar of the ocean, as if the natural world itself mourned the violation of sacred law. The wrath of the gods was swift and merciless. Zeus, guardian of divine order and justice, unleashed a tempest upon the ship, striking it with thunderbolts and tossing it mercilessly upon the waves. The vessel broke apart, and the sea claimed the lives of all but one. Odysseus, clinging to wreckage, endured the fury of the storm, his skill and determination allowing him to survive where others perished. He floated alone amidst the wreckage, the cries of his fallen comrades echoing in his ears, a somber reminder of human fallibility in the face of divine power. This catastrophe etched into Odysseus the harshest of lessons. Obedience to divine will is not merely ritual, but a matter of survival. Every action has consequences, and even the cleverest of mortals cannot escape the reach of the gods. The tragedy of the cattle of Helios stands as a testament to the perils of hubris, the unyielding power of the divine, and the fragile balance between human desire and the cosmic order. Odysseus' solitary survival would carry him forward, wiser and more cautious, as he continued his long and arduous journey toward Ithaca, forever haunted by the price of disobedience and the weight of divine justice. Part 9. Calypso and the island of Ogygia. After enduring the wrath of Poseidon and the perils of mortal folly, Odysseus found himself cast upon the shores of Ogygia, a remote and enchanted island where time seemed to stretch and bend under the gaze of the immortal nymph Calypso. She was both radiant and beguiling, a figure of divine beauty, whose voice and presence wove a spell of comfort, longing, and subtle captivity. For years Odysseus remained her guest, even as the passage of time became a silent torment, a reminder of the life and home he had left far behind. Calypso offered immortality, a life of ease and pleasure far beyond the reach of mortal men. Yet Odysseus' heart remained tethered to Ithaca, to Penelope, and to the home he had longed for through storm and strife. His mind wrestled with temptation and duty, caught between the alluring promise of eternity and the enduring call of mortality, love, and responsibility. Each day on Ogygia was both paradise and prison, the nymph's care a gilded cage from which escape required courage, patience, and divine favor. Finally, the gods intervened. Athena, ever watchful, petitioned Zeus to remind Calypso of the laws of fate and the will of the gods. Reluctantly, yet bound by divine decree, Calypso provided Odysseus with the means to leave, a raft and provisions sufficient for the long journey across the open sea. With a heart heavy from both farewell and anticipation, Odysseus set sail once more, leaving the enchanted island behind, but carrying within him the lessons of endurance, self-restraint, and the unyielding strength of human longing. The episode of Calypso and Ogygia speaks to the tension between desire and duty, the struggle to resist comfort when the call of destiny is louder, and the power of patience and perseverance. Odysseus emerged not just as a survivor, but as a hero, tempered by time, temptation, and the unending pull of home. His journey further entwined with the fates of gods, men, and the relentless sea that both nurtures and tests the spirit. Part 10. Return to Ithaca. After a decade of relentless trials, Odysseus' journey across storm-tossed seas and enchanted lands drew to its long-awaited conclusion. Guided by Athena's wisdom and protection, he approached the shores of Ithaca, his homeland cloaked in the familiar yet strange hues of time and absence. Disguised as a humble beggar, he moved silently through the streets and halls of his palace, observing the chaos wrought by the suitors who had overrun his home, consumed by greed and arrogance, disrespecting the sanctity of his household and the honor of his family. Odysseus' return was not merely a physical journey, but a culmination of all his trials, a reckoning of skill, patience, and cunning. Every step was measured, every interaction carefully calculated, for he understood that vengeance, justice, and restoration required both strategy and courage. The suitors, arrogant and oblivious, continued their feasts and revelry, unaware that the master of the house was among them, the very embodiment of intellect, endurance, and wrath. With Athena's guidance, Odysseus revealed himself at the opportune moment. His bow, unmatched in strength and precision, became the instrument of justice, felling those who had defiled his home. The loyal servants, Penelope and Telemachus, witnessed the triumph of cunning and resolve over hubris and disorder. The suitors' defeat restored order, reaffirming the natural and divine laws that govern the world of gods and men. Finally, Odysseus reunited with Penelope, a moment both tender and profound, the reunion emblematic of loyalty, patience, and enduring love. Ithaca, once a land beset by chaos and threat, became whole again through the hero's return. The Odyssey had tested mind, body, and spirit, and in the homecoming, every trial, every encounter with monsters, gods, and temptation found its resolution. The story of Odysseus' return is a testament to the enduring human spirit, to perseverance, the pursuit of justice, the triumph of wisdom over folly, and the unbreakable bonds of home and family, forever immortalized in the annals of legend. Legacy of the Odyssey. Odysseus' journey, spanning oceans and decades, stands as a timeless testament to the resilience, cunning, and enduring spirit of humanity. Each trial he faced, from the temptations of the Lotus-Eaters, the wrath of gods, the deadly allure of the Sirens, to the monstrous terrors of Scylla and Charybdis, shaped him, tested his intellect, and forged his endurance. The Odyssey was more than a voyage across the seas. It was a journey into the depths of human courage, patience, and wisdom, a mirror reflecting both the fragility and the strength of mortal life. The legacy of Odysseus endures through the ages, reminding us that survival requires both wit and bravery, that every choice carries consequence, and that the path to home, to what is cherished and sacred, is seldom simple or straight. Through storm, temptation, and the inexorable forces of fate, Odysseus prevailed, not simply as a hero, but as a symbol of human perseverance, intellect, and the ceaseless drive to overcome the impossible. The Odyssey, immortalized in song and story, continues to echo the trials, triumphs, and tenacity of one man's journey, a voyage of struggle, endurance, and ultimately, the profound satisfaction of returning to what one holds dear. In the tale of Odysseus, we find a reflection of ourselves, the relentless pursuit of purpose, the courage to face the unknown, and the enduring hope that, no matter how long or perilous the journey, the heart will find its way home.
And that's it for today's story about Odysseus and his epic journey home. I hope you enjoyed diving into the trials, monsters, and adventures of this legendary hero. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on more myth and epic tales. So again, thank you and bye bye.